Welcome to WP-Tonic, episode 159. Today we're talking all about WordPress contact forms. And before we get into today's episode, I'd like to thank our sponsor. Today's episode is being sponsored by Liquid Web. Liquid Web is a fully managed hosting company offering managed WordPress hosting. Liquid Web's managed WordPress is designed for mission-critical sites that want maximized uptime, increased capacity, and improved performance. Liquid Web is the partner that businesses want. And with Liquid Web, your content and site are always safe, they're optimized for speed, and you can manage all of your sites easily through a single portal. Every Liquid Web managed WordPress customer will get a license of iThemes Sync Pro included with their monthly subscription. And Liquid Web is offering a 33% discount for 6 months. Just head on over to liquidweb.com/WordPress and use the code WP-Tonic33 at checkout. And now I'm going to let the panel introduce themselves. Kim, who are you? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Kim Shivler. I teach people how to build online courses and membership platforms using WordPress. And Sallie, your cat's ears come up behind your head, so it looks like you have cat ears. That's so cute. You can find me at howtobuildanonlinecourse.com or whiteglovewebtraining.com.
Excellent. And Sallie, how do we find you? Who are you?
My name is Sallie Getch. My company is WP Fangirl. I'm the organizer of the East Bay WordPress meetup in Oakland, California. This is my cat, BC, who we're thinking of making the next internet star as Klutzy Kitty.
Excellent. And Jonathan, what about you?
I'm just fascinated with the cat, really, John. Sorry. I'm the founder of WP-Tonic. We're a WordPress maintenance support company. We support many companies, and also we support developers and WordPress consultants. And I just want to quickly say, folks, that we really appreciate the support of Liquid Web. If you get value from the show, please Twitter Liquid Web and tell them that you really appreciate them supporting WP-Tonic.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I may contact them, and I wasn't aware that managed WordPress, and I have a client who desperately needs new hosting.
Well, they've been in the industry long. I think they're a very reputable company, aren't they, Sallie? They've been in the industry.
I know a lot of people who like them, but they previously had a reputation as basically the host that you go to if you like managing servers. A really kind of developer-oriented hosting company.
That's great.
No, definitely exciting to see them in the managed WordPress space. And I'm John Locke. My business is Lockdown Design. I help blue-collar industries with their WordPress development and local SEO. Before we get into today's main topic of the contact forms, we have a few WordPress news stories. At the very top, we have Jetpack 4.5 is expanding the monetization with WordAds integration. And what I got from this article sounds like basically they're trying to compete with AdWords. Kim, did you hear about this, and what are your thoughts?
I thought the same thing. I didn't know anything about WordAds before this article. I'm not on WordPress.com. And so I didn't know anything about it until I read it. And that's exactly what I took away from it, that they're trying to improve or grow that piece of their side of the puzzle and put it right into Jetpack. And they're taking it now, I guess, where even if you have a premium, you don't have to have a huge subscriber base or huge page view base, just a premium subscription, and you can play in that space.
Yeah, it's interesting. I am not really on WordPress.com either, so I didn't really know about this, though I do have experience with sites that have AdWords on it. And yeah, it's very interesting. Like if you are paying like $9 a month, you have a chance to earn like ad revenue, I suppose. Sallie, what are your thoughts on this? Is this a monetization strategy that's going to work? And overall, the state of advertising, is this something that's worth doing?
I don't know, and I think the article was good about being, expressing some concerns. I remember WordAds. I'm amazed they got away with that name, right, without any kind of trademark issues.
Right?
But because those are the ads that you see on WordPress.com sites if you're not logged in. The ads that get shown on the free sites. That are part of how they're free, and I suppose they must work to some degree, or they wouldn't have been doing them for so long. And they may be an interesting option for some bloggers. It's the kind of website that both that I have myself and that I build for most of my clients are not interested in kind of generic ads, that if they're almost all their marketing is for their own products or services, and so it's not likely to be of a lot of interest to my clients. But if you're somebody who you're blogging and advertising is a way to try to monetize your blog, that may be interesting to you. Whether it's more or less interesting than Google Ads, or whether you want to try both of them, is I think something you're going to just have to experiment with. So we'll see whether there's very much uptake and whether people find it valuable.
Definitely. Jonathan, one of the things that was pointed out in this article is, instead of being paid for clicks like you would be with AdWords, with WordAds, you're paid by impressions. And according to one person that they were talking to in this article, they were getting a substantial amount of money for a couple of years, and then now it's just kind of spare change. And according to what the Tavern was reporting here, is WordAds was paying out substantially more than they should have been early on for low quality impressions. What are your thoughts about paying for impressions instead of clicks? And is advertising revenue even a viable model in 2017?
Well, I'm not an expert on the field, but by reading the article, no. Basically, I was really quite surprised by how little people are now being paid. But it's been an ongoing trend, isn't it? And I think it's linked to what the article said, ad blockers. I think also people are becoming, totally blind to a lot of advertising on web pages to some extent. So especially some of the magazine sites. I think last Saturday we were jokingly talking about, a lot of these magazine sites, when you're on a tablet, they're almost unusable. They've got so many pop-ups, and
they're unusable on a desktop.
Yeah, they're unusable
Agreed.
anywhere, basically. I was trying to be charitable, but they're unusable. The actual user experience is dreadful now because, they're trying to overcome ad blockers and a reduction in revenue. I think, because it was quite an extensive article, wasn't it? It went on, and I think that's why, because he delved quite deep into the reality, and it was quite shocking, really, how little. And I've got to be truthful, it doesn't endear, it's another thing that doesn't endear me about Jetpack. But to be serious, only bloggers who are trying to make revenue would probably be interested in it, wouldn't they, John?
I would think that, it'd be something to try, but I can tell you from experience that unless you've got a massive amount of traffic, you're not going to get a lot from, AdWords or WordAds, either one. You really need to bring the traffic. I mean, in a serious way. If you're going to make a living from this. I know in the early Web 1.0 and 2.0 days, there's people that built empires on AdSense and things of this nature. But as our panel pointed out, there's ad blockers. People have had banner blindness since 1998. That's a proven fact. So people have these annoying popovers. I just, I really see the future, right now being mobile advertising, and that really seems to be the thing that's growing. I know that we have friends, our friend Jake, spends a lot of time trying to figure out how to make, ads appear in front of people. And I really think that this is an industry-wide dilemma, especially you see it, with any type of online publishing, newspapers, any sort of a media that's pumping out stuff. This is something that really does need to be solved.
Well, I think it's a sign that the landscape's going to change. I think companies that will have to really be more fussy about who they work with and try and become more of a partnership with particular podcasts or radio programs or television programs where you've got a particular program or podcast that's dealing with a particular subject, and it's more that they become a partner rather than just an advert, if you understand. I see that as the future, really.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of wisdom to that. But
I see that.
Go ahead.
I see that, and I see for the blogging community, and I make some of my money off of the website and the free content that I provide. I think that for all the irritation of what those things do to your user experience, the best play going forward is other long-term partnerships like you were talking about, Jonathan, as well as still building really good content around products that you use and love, and then having the affiliate play.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the affiliate money is still pretty good. I don't get rich off of it, but every couple of days I get a PayPal note that, another $100, $200 or whatever was deposited. And that's much more than the 10 cents per all these clicks, and for what you're doing to your users with, like, I just am at a point where if I get to one of those news sites somehow through a link and I start seeing the ads, I'm just gone. I don't even read the article. I'll find it somewhere else.
No, I agree with you. I think, for bloggers, I think affiliate income is definitely more profitable than advertising. Yeah, definitely. And I've seen that, just overall. Time to move on to our second news story, which comes from the CozmosLabs blog. Is business growth the best metric to focus on? And this is another, year in a review post. There was a lot of them that came out in December and January. The basic thing that they were asking at the end, and I want to ask Kim this, is, the basic question is growth a good metric to focus on? And I think what they were trying to say is it depends on what you're giving up in order to grow. If you're growing just for the sake of growing, that might not be sustainable or even healthy. Kim, what are your thoughts on, just tracking, revenue growth? Is there other things that you look at as metrics for growth?
Well, absolutely. One of the keys, two things. One is just a technical. Revenue growth is fine, but where are your expenses? Where's your overhead? Where's all that? If your revenue is growing and your expenses are growing higher, you're in a really problematic place, right? Then the other piece of that is, you can have revenue growing, but if it's too expensive, then it can sink your business. And that's just a business piece. But the other piece, and particularly looking at a group like that, is not just revenue growth, but product growth. He was talking about some of the issues of that, of, how do we decide what to focus on and what to grow? Because I think you can see from them that lifestyle is also important, more than even monetary growth. It sounded like, they work 4 days a week, they take Friday off. That's a core of who they are. So could their business become unsustainable in that way if it was just continued, let's grow, let's build. We can make money doing this, but are we going off onto a rat hole that could cause problems in the long run for the business. So what's the purpose of your business? Are you trying to scale it so you can sell it and you aren't having to be involved? Or are you trying to keep something that you're really enjoying, making a living at, and having a 4-day work week?
I love how you put that, it's kind of like defining what the purpose of even growing is. And I think that a lot of companies, like, their DNA changes once they get to a certain size. They can start out with a vision of what they want to be, but I think when they get to a certain size, it's like impossible to maintain it in the same way. And so that can be a challenge. I wanted to ask Sallie too, when it comes to like measuring, growth, what types of things do you look at or do you value when it comes to, growth? Do you just look at revenue or maybe profitability, or?
Yeah, I would care more about growing my profits than growing my revenue, because maybe my revenue would stay the same, but I found ways to work a ton more efficiently, and therefore, my profit goes up substantially. That would be good. I'm not saying I managed to achieve that, mind you. But the other thing is, growth is. I remember hearing someone, in speaking about the obsession that corporate America particularly has with growth. Is like, the only thing that keeps growing without ever stopping is cancer.
You're right.
And that maybe growth isn't actually necessarily what you're aiming for. You do have to kind of step back and say, yeah, what are the goals? What are the values of the business? And if expenses are going up, if the overall cost of living and your overhead and so on is going to increase, which it probably is, then your revenue has to increase enough to go with it, or you're going to go out of business. So you probably have to increase revenue to some degree. But what else are you or aren't you accomplishing? Maybe you've invested a lot in your company in order to achieve something longer term, so your profit don't look as good for this year, but 2 or 3 years down the line, it's really going to pay off for you. So I think a lot of it is about, it's like, it's great if you're making a ton more money. I have no objections to that. But even in the, like, I made more money this year than I ever did in my life.
Congrats.
Thank you. And it was great. But, I did have to spend a couple of months practically working myself into a coma for it. And I've had several people say, was it worth it? It's like, well, it was worth it to do it for the short term, because I desperately needed a new car, and now I have one. And it was also a project that I did really enjoy, but I physically couldn't sustain that level of effort. So would it be worth trying to do that all the time in order to make that much more money? No. I would have to find, if I wanted, I would have to find a way that was less physically taxing. So I think you have to, as you say, what is the, what is the cost of the growth, and what is the growth achieving? Is it achieving something for your personal lifestyle, for your company's overall goals, for your, for making your, increasing your customer satisfaction? I think to grow for the sake of growing, you just lose track of what actually matters.
I think that's well said. Money is kind of useless if you're too burnt out to enjoy it. Really, a lot of people talk about wealth, and it's really about wealth of time. It's not really about how much money you have in the bank necessarily. Jonathan, what were your big takeaways from this article, and what are the things that you measure when it comes to business growth?
I think the panels put some very different point of view to the article. The things I got, it was slightly different. I'd just like to ask the panel quickly: have you heard of this company before, and have you used any of their plugins at all?
I have not heard of them, although I want to check out their profile builder, but I had not heard of them before.
I've heard of them, but not used anything. Sorry. Go ahead,
I think I've seen some of their articles before. I don't know that I've ever used any of their products.
No,
But
I haven't, and I wasn't aware of the company yet. They were saying I think it's about 23% growth, wasn't it?
28%, and that this was
28. Mhm.
right. They've had more growth in past years. I think I've seen the WordPress creation kit. I don't know if I've ever looked at it, but I think I probably, came across it somewhere and thought, I wonder if that would be interesting. But, since what it does is a lot of it is the same as ACF, and I'm already familiar with ACF, I'm not that likely to go and investigate it.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
there are a ton of plugins out there that they've sort of vaguely crossed my radar, but I didn't have an immediate need for them. And so whether I've heard of it or not is not a good test of whether that's a successful product.
No, but what I took from that was it was very encouraging. Much more, and they were saying that in the article they can only see the plugin world getting much more competitive, a bit like hosting. And I think that on the Matt report, I think he's been having Matt's been having some conversations with his interviewees that things are probably going to get much more competitive in the plugin market. And I think you're going to see that in our main topic when we talk about contact form builders. So in some ways, I was quite amazed at the amount of growth they got, really, in plugin sectors that are quite competitive. And then I took the bit like they took Fridays off, where I work 7 days a week, basically, but not kind of in your tradition. I have breaks. I can go off and do what I want to do in the mornings, and then I normally do more serious work in the afternoon. Well, I am working, but it's not your kind of traditional 8 till 5. I'm all over the place. The reason I want to make some money is the only thing that money really gives you a bit more choice. That's what it gives you, choice. When you die, you're not going to take it with you. It just gives you more choice to do the things that you might want to really want to do. Really, that's my point of view, John.
I agree. Couldn't say it better. Definitely, profitability, revenue is important because, it shows that you're doing something right. But profitability is good. And what that gives you is like margin in your life. It gives you the ability to take more time off and not work yourself into the ground. I think that's a big thing that people talk about, work-life balance, and some people, value that. And especially if they have like a family. And then some people are like, no, you gotta work like a maniac and then you can, take time off later. But one thing that I've really found, I think, is like when you work like a maniac, a lot of people don't relax, even when they get to success. Kind of how you are is like how you stay. And so I think it's good to know who you are and just embrace, what you want to do. Do you want to, work like a maniac, or do you enjoy taking some time off? I think everybody enjoys a little bit of time off, and profitability is what allows you to do that. We're going to move on to our last story really quick. Postmatic Basic, which is a plugin in the WordPress org repo, rebrands as Replyable. And basically what this plugin does is it allows you to subscribe to comments, and you can reply to comments like via email. But now it is turning itself into a software as a service product. Kim, have you heard of this? Do you use it, and what are your thoughts?
I hadn't heard of it at all. I actually just use the default comments. I don't use Discuss or any of those. I'm just very, very basic with my comments. So I hadn't actually heard of it. I did see the point where they were saying, potential blowback from people who, when you try to take a free plugin and turn it into a software as a service. So I think they're probably smart to do some kind of grandfathering in that they're doing. But for me, it wasn't, I kind of read it and like, okay, it'll be interesting to see, but it wasn't something I was familiar with or that I think I would use. It's just not what I would do.
Yeah. Sallie, your thoughts on this? Is email commenting, and is that something that would be valuable? You blog a lot.
I wish. I wrote like all of my blog posts for 2016, like on New Year's Eve, and backdated them. It was painful. But seriously, we had Postmatic sponsor a session of our WordPress meetup a year ago, 2 years ago. I'm not very good with time, but and people were wondering about it a little bit, but did a test, and the thing is that it's for subscription, the sort of the free version was at that point subscribe and reply to comments by email, and there are a lot of people for whom email is the most comfortable and familiar technology, and the idea behind it was kind of to encourage more discussion. And so some of the people who had been sort of skeptical about it were sort of like, yeah, we might actually try this. And what it looks like now is that they'd expanded there was always a premium version, that they've expanded the premium version so it includes a bunch of additional kinds of things in addition to just subscribing to the comments. And now they're kind of saying, okay, well, so there are people who don't need all of that extra stuff. They really just want to have that, making it easier to have a comment conversation part. And we're going to have a lower charge for that tier, and and rebrand it. Yes, if a free version of something goes away completely, there will be some people who complain. But I think they've anticipated that. I mean, that's not a hard thing to predict. You should have some kind of plan for it. And it doesn't make them evil that they want to do it. And we'll see how it goes. I mean, commenting is kind of a tricky business these days because discussions about your posts, if they happen, there may be a bunch of stuff happening on social media. There may be, it used to be like your blog comments were kind of it. But there are still blogs that get tons of comments. So, if your blog is one of those, this could be worthwhile for you.
I have to say that, I have certain articles that get a lot of comments. Not every single one, but there's certain ones that get a ton. And there's conversations that like keep going for like a year or like more, So I think, if you have a blog where you have a number of articles like that, this would definitely be something to look into. And I can think a lot of people in the WordPress ecosystem that would benefit from this. They get a lot of comments on a consistent basis. So, Jonathan, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I know the key developer, Dylan. He because I was based for about almost 3 years at the Reno Collective, which is a co-working facility in Reno, folks. And Dylan and his wife Anne, who used to manage the place, and he's a great developer. He's a bit of a character, and very decent guy. And I did meet his partner Jason, and they've been in the WordPress business for a long time. They did high-end non-profit, national organization websites in WordPress. That was their speciality. And then they decided to go into the Dylan has done a number of plugins. He does a Google Map plugin that's very popular. I forgot its name. So the winning this, what I got from the article is that pricing is a nightmare. And basically, I've got another business that I've been trying to get established, and what I got from the article is that they almost had two user bases, and they were getting conflicting messages. One user base just wanted the fundamental functionality of the core of what they're offering at a lower price. then they had Upper End, which was probably linked to the contacts that they had with non-profits and the work they'd done previous, that wanted fully featured a much bigger plugin solution. And they're trying to deal with this by what they described in the article, John. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that is exactly what I saw. Like Sally's mentioned before, sometimes at the lower end, the people who already have it in their mind that like everything should be free, even if you charge $1, that's like the biggest obstacle. It wouldn't matter if it was $1 or $100. It's just the fact that it's money coming out of their pocket, like spare change, is the obstacle. And then at the other end, they mentioned people who were using MailChimp to send out RSS, and they were paying $6,000 a month because they were like a very large blog with a lot of subscribers, and they were saying you guys are only $1,500, and maybe this is like rolled into Postmatic, but and so they were they're saying like a pricing has to be according to expectations of the people that you're marketing to. I do think that the email subscription thing with Replyable, it's only $2.99 a month. It's like $3. If you have a very active blog and people comment at all, I think it's worth taking a look at. Because I can tell you this, like just from an SEO perspective, Google really does look at how many people comment on a post. And when they see like a lot of people like having a conversation like on your post, that really does like play into, it getting it pushed up the rankings. So definitely something to look at. Glad to see them, moving from the free plugin to having a software as a service. And I think a lot more plugins in the WordPress ecosystem are going to go that route in the next couple of years.
I only wish them well. They're both really decent guys, and I hope it works out for them.
Definitely. Well, I think it's time to roll to our break. And then when we come back, we're going to be talking all about contact forms for WordPress. See it in just a second. We're coming back from our break, and we're talking contact forms for WordPress. And there's a lot of contact forms in the space. There's Contact Form 7, Gravity Forms, Caldera Forms, WP-Forms, Ninja Forms, Formidable Forms. But just before we get into analyzing each of those, just want to go around the panel really quick and ask, with a contact form, a lot in the past, it would just be like, just send a little message and with your name and maybe your phone number, email. How have contact forms advanced in the last few years, and how are people using contact forms now in a way that they weren't before? Kim?
Well, they're completely, they have complete conditional logic. Many of them, at least the good ones. I have people using them actually as gateways to opt-ins and deliverable PDFs and that type of thing, where they didn't want a full-blown membership site. They had something, they wanted to deliver it, and Ninja Forms does that really well and super easy. And many of the others do it also. But so there's people doing all kinds of things with them, almost even up to a level you could do Google Form type, getting input, and then based on that, how does that tie people into a sales process or onboarding sequence or something like that. So forms have come a long way.
Excellent. I'm glad you mentioned that. It is the contact form. It really is like a gateway to a lot of stuff. Sallie, how are you seeing people using contact forms in the current day?
Well, the thing is that I'm not necessarily seeing that much difference in how people are using forms, because for many years there have been some people who needed sophisticated forms that were doing that, where it was more than basically, this is a way to send us an email where people aren't going to, harvest our email address. There are plenty of people who still just use that kind of form. I think there are now more people who are using more sophisticated forms, forms that, you know, maybe routed to a different person depending on the subject, where there's, you know, where they're using them for things, where they're using them for collecting payments, where they're using, and, you know, the thing that's really changed since basically Gravity Forms was it, if you wanted anything like conditional logic or, you know, is that there are now so many players in the space that it's become clear that there is a demand for this. There will continue to be a demand for this, and that there is room, you know, if you can establish that you have a good product, and therefore, you know, I think we'll probably only see additional competitors. It astonishes me how many people still use Contact Form 7 when it's such a clunky solution to put anything together in. But people still do, and it's not even like the only thing out there that's free anymore. But you know, I would like to have the opportunity to examine, you know, more of these solutions in more detail. I ran into an issue with Gravity Forms on a site recently, and because they really only needed something simple, I just swapped in the free Ninja form. You know, that was easy. And end of story. And you know, even people who are big fans of Gravity Forms are like, you know, that form creation interface, that could seriously use a little overhauling.
That's a good point. I mean, and every form creator, every form builder is a little bit different. They're all basically similar. I do like what you said, like Contact Form 7 is a little bit clunky. Still like one of the most downloaded plugins in the repo. I mean, I've seen a lot of people use it though, because you can, you know, you can add in stuff. You can do like callbacks on it, but you can do that with the, you know, Gravity Forms or any of these other ones too. I think a lot of it comes down to how developer friendly a contact or yeah, like a form plugin is, like how much you can hook into it. You know, what can you filter? What can you add as far as hooks and stuff like that? And Jonathan, what have you seen as far as like how people are using contact forms in the last few years? How has it changed?
Change? Well, I don't think it has much. What is surprising is the amount of sites, and large sites that probably large government entity sites, state sites, charity, non-profit. I don't know if you would agree with this, John. The amount you go to and their forms are awful. I mean,
Yeah.
really awful. You know, no feedback, no. They're really clunky, aren't they? There's a lot of that going on in there. The other thing is, it's just the breadth of choice now that you got around forms that you didn't have even, let's say, 18 months ago. You've had a lot of new players coming in. I thought on a business side, I thought the interesting was WP-Forms, bulky, you know, and, you know, Monster going into this area aggressively with his marketing machine, and it's not the cheap, you know. I think they got a basic for $39, haven't they? But I think they're really going up against Gravity Forms. You know, they're really trying to take them on. I've actually not used it because I've got a developer's license with Gravity Forms. So I just tend to keep with that. And then if I'm dealing with a very low budget client and they're not happy, they're not. I look at some other alternatives. I would look at any alternative that excludes Contact Form 7. I'm not a great fan, and I'm not really a great fan of Jetpack's Contact Form module. But there's a lot of choice now that you don't have to use those more lower end products, isn't there, John?
Definitely. One thing that everybody said is there's a lot of market validation for contact forms. Just because there's people that are already in that space and thriving doesn't mean that, you know, there's not room for more, because obviously more people are just keep coming in. So there's definitely a lot of room, and we've seen a lot of people come in the last few years and really attack this space. Want to just kind of quickly just throw out like names of certain forms, and we'll discuss them at length, like kind of around the room. Pros and cons. I'll start with Kim. Contact Form 7, you know, pros and cons of Contact Form 7.
Well, I think a lot of it's already been said. It's clunky. It's not fully functional. It's a very basic free contact form. But it doesn't have the extensive logic and things that something like the professional version of Ninja Forms does, or Gravity Forms. For me, I started with Contact Form 7 and I used to teach it. Now that Ninja Forms has the freemium model, for my people, that's what I tend to teach, because I can start them at the basic if that's all they need, and I can take them all the way up into some pretty advanced conditional logic if we need to. So that's kind of where I lean with those. I've used to use Formidable. It was recommended highly to me. It's okay. My preference has been the Ninja Forms, and my experience with Gravity Forms has been much less. But I did have one situation where they were having trouble with the conditional logic that was going on there, and it was with the Gravity Forms, and it was a very simple fix with the Ninja Forms. So that's what we did. You mentioned opt-in monster also. My challenge with that one is, since they took it away from a plugin and put it software as a service, it really slows your site down.
Okay. That's good to know.
That's a problem.
Anybody else with thoughts on Contact Form 7? Like it, hate it? What's it good for?
Well, it's a German guy, isn't it? And he was in cooking, and he had all these chef stuff all over his website. And when you read some of the support tickets and some of his attitude, but this is about 4 years ago. But if you went to and saw some of his replies to some of the support tickets, you just shuddered. You know, you just kind of cringed. I don't know how. Has he got a premium version of this? Is it?
No, it's as far as I know, it's all free. The guy's in Japan. Yeah, I think he's Japanese.
It's Japanese. Well, I'm sure.
Pretty sure. Yeah.
All right, maybe he moved to Japan. I don't know. I think if you got a really, you know, forms are important, and I cannot honestly recommend that as a solution for the bulk of my clients. I think Ninja, like what Kim said, and there's some other quite good free alternatives now. I think you'd be better off looking at something else myself, but that's just my opinion.
Nah, I feel you. I want to turn to, I'm glad you mentioned that, Sallie. You and Kim both mentioned that you use Ninja Forms. Tell us what you like about that, and some of the things that you will get with Ninja Forms.
Well, I've only ever used the free version of Ninja Forms, but it's got a pretty nice form building interface. I noticed they changed it fairly recently, because when I just swapped it in for Gravity Forms on this site, the interface for adding parts to your forms was different, but you get a fair number of options for things that a person would need on a basic contact form, and who receives it, and what kind of response message they get, and that sort of thing. It doesn't have the, I have once or twice used the Jetpack contact form, and it's both limited and confusing. Ninja Forms is, I mean, I hesitate to describe anything as intuitive. I don't know that I would say that, but it's not too difficult to figure out, how to create a form and arrange it to your liking and include fields and then display it. I think there are a couple of things. Like there was a case, a client that was using Marketo, and they were looking at possible integrations between Marketo and WordPress in terms of the forms. They eventually decided to just keep building their forms at Marketo, which is like catastrophically horrendous. The CSS on those forms is UGLY. One of the integration products basically insisted that you use Contact Form 7 or something else where you could build things in a certain way so that they could like interpret those wrappers or something. And Gravity Forms is pretty notoriously awful to style. I haven't ever tried doing anything super fancy with it, so I haven't come to the point of ripping all my hair out. But I've heard the Ninja Forms people talk about, trying to make their forms easier to style for people than Gravity Forms are. And, that kind of thing matters if you need a form that doesn't look basic and generic. I mean, I think that, the basic form style is meant to look adequate on most websites. It's usually okay. It's not like anything to write home about, but it's usually okay. So, I like Ninja Forms, but their piece-by-piece pricing model is one of those where, like, I pay one fee for a developer license for Gravity Forms, and I can use all of the extensions everywhere, on however many sites I want. And that's a better model for me as a developer than trying to pay for all of the different parts. Now, of course, if I was going to use a pro version of Ninja Forms, I definitely need to make sure that, the clients paid for the licenses for whatever it was that they needed on the site. And theoretically, this is what you should have clients do with plugins anyway. But sometimes that works well and sometimes it doesn't, because the client's ability to keep track of their login information and when their licenses have to be updated and all this thing, and they're probably going to come back to me and ask me to deal with any support issues anyway. So the pricing model can make a difference to what I decide, but I want to look at some of these alternatives in more depth. I'd love to have a meetup about basically the sort of, contact form face-off, and hear from people who are, actually really experienced with using some of these other form tools, because, there are likely advantages to other things that I
that was Gravity Forms,
right? Wouldn't discover. It looks like it's probably one of those robo spam calls that I wouldn't necessarily discover right away as a new user, but that could be really compelling.
Yeah, and this is probably the thing that has kept me away from Ninja Forms in a way, because looking at the add-ons, I am so used to Gravity Forms with, say, if you get a developer license, you get all the add-ons, and it's basically like all the add-ons that you would get in any of these other models if you use like Ninja Forms or something similar. But with Ninja Forms, it's okay. So you either buy each extension separately, or you buy the $99 a year, and then you get just the ones that they choose, like conditional logic, which is already in Gravity Forms, or you can spend, $500 and get all the add-ons, or $199, and then you get, the certain ones you get at $99 and 40% off all the rest of them. It's just kind of, I guess that could work for some people, but I mean, and maybe it's more, this is a business model that works for them, but I mean, this is probably what has kept me away from them.
Yeah,
so is it the pricing? The pricing?
Yeah, it's just confusing.
Because because the agency does give you everything, unlimited sites, all the
Right.
add-ons, but it's $500 a year.
Right. And for Gravity
Yeah.
Forms, it's like 100 and something a year for everything.
199.
And I think you get, yeah, and
Yeah,
I
it's
think you get discounts on renewals. So
I think the one, Josh Pollock came on the show, folks, and he's a fantastic developer and a real character. I love Josh. And Caldera Forms, he gave us, he was very generous, and he gave WP-Tonic a discount. I just haven't used it, but I mean to really delve into his form solution. And he's also gave a discount to WP-Tonic users, and I'll be fishing it out. And if you go to the show notes, folks, go to the show notes, that offer will be on the show notes. And I really encourage people, developers, people in the WordPress community, to look at Josh Solutions, and I'm really mean to use it on the WP-Tonic website and some other sites, because I think he's a great developer, and the things he was doing with it seemed really interesting. What do you think, John?
So I actually used Caldera Forms for a project recently. I hadn't used it because, like a lot of people, I have a Gravity Forms developer license, and so I really just kind of default to that. But I did want to, try it because there was a specific thing I was trying to do, and I wanted to see if Caldera Forms could do it. So a little bit about this: it's basically a drag and drop responsive builder. Like it's responsive out of the box, which is good. It's a really intuitive drag and drop builder. You just you select your different types of input fields, and then you just pull them over into your form. I found it pretty easy to use and not too difficult to style either, which is a big thing for me. I'm going to be really honest. Like, how easy it is to style a form with CSS is a big thing. I mean, there's two parts to a form. There's kind of functionality, which is super, super important. It has to be able to hook together like different things and make them work, which, Gravity Forms does really good. You can use Zapier to, integrate any services that aren't supported in the add-ins, as you can do with Ninja Forms, as you can do with a lot of these. But I will say Gravity Forms is tough to style. It's a very complicated.
You do agree with that, John? It's tough to style.
Caldera Forms is a little bit easier to style as far as CSS, and it's very similar as far as putting together a form. I actually like it, and I think it is a good solution for a lot of people, and it's worth checking out if you are looking for an alternative to Gravity Forms. Has anybody else used Caldera Forms?
I have not.
What about WP Forms, John? Have you got any experience of that at all?
Now, this is the one from Syed Belki, right?
Yeah.
And now, I do not have experience with this one, but it is also a form builder. I do not have any experience with this, but it looks, very similar to, Gravity Forms or Caldera Forms. It's kind of just like an easy, intuitive, form builder. Anybody in the room had experience with this one?
I don't.
No, there's just silence. This is what, folks, we're going to try and attempt to get the show onto Facebook, because we'd love to get your comments and get more engagement, because we're kind of, but we tend to use Gravity Forms, and it's a great product, but this styling issue has been an ongoing issue with Gravity Forms. And like what Sallie said, if you're just looking for pure functionality, and that's okay, Gravity Forms is still and for all the stuff you get for the developer's license, it's still good value, isn't it, John? But when it comes to the actual styling, it's a pain in the posterior, isn't it, John?
Yeah. There's a couple things here in the WP Forms that are useful. Like, they have a signature add-on. Gravity Forms also has that.
Yeah.
We've used that, which is useful. Anything with a touch screen or a mouse, you can get their signature. One other thing that also is in Gravity Forms that I noticed is in WP Forms is user registration. You can actually like register a user from your site from the form, which is pretty good to have. What is the pricing on this? Let's take a look. So this one, the Ultimate, basically you can get a lifetime for $449, or similar to Gravity Forms, $199 a year for that. That's for WP Forms. It's basically the same pricing, except they have like a lifetime VIP plan as well. So $449 lifetime, and then the other pricing is basically exactly what you would expect from Gravity Forms. Let's talk about that one as well, why that one has become the default leader. Kim, why do you think Gravity Forms has become kind of the one that's kind of like leading the pack when it comes to premium form builders?
I don't 100% know. I mean, for me, it's the first premium one I ever heard of. So I don't know if they were early to market. You guys would have to tell me that. But I know that when I came on board and got out of Drupal and into WordPress, I started looking at
saw the light, Kim. The road to
I saw the light. And, you know, that was just one of the first ones that was thrown around. And I found, actually ended up finding Ninja Forms.
Of Drupal.
Yeah, I was saved. I was recommended Ninja Forms at a WordPress meetup and really liked it. But that was, I don't know enough about the history of Gravity Forms to know what made it. I do know I've heard it thrown around by some of the big, you know, internet marketing type people and some of the big podcasters who have large audiences. So that could never hurt.
There you go. I do like it. There's a lot of things that are built in. Like it has a lot of built-in add-in services where it connects to, you know, basically all the email subscription services, you know, all your CRMs, your payment gateways. Pretty much most of them are like already, there's a premium add-ons. So if you get a developer's license, you're already covered for all those. So that is one thing I like. Sallie, any thoughts on Gravity Forms? Like it, hate it?
I like it, but as I said, you know, it's I've been using it for a long time and not necessarily investigated other possibilities closely. And I would be open to switching if something seemed like it was going to be better in areas where it mattered, or to adding it on as a, you know, sometimes this is better, sometimes that's better. I'm pretty sure the reason Gravity Forms was dominant is that they were so much earlier to market than these other solutions. You know, it was basically, you had Contact Form 7 and then you had Gravity Forms, and it was a no-brainer to choose in between them. And, you know, Gravity Forms continued to do well over the years. And I think as the, you know, as the plugin economy expanded generally, you know, people realized there is, you know, we could compete with this. There is room for more than one player. And so the options have expanded, and you know, they are not necessarily, you know, burdened with the technical debt of Gravity Forms. That's sort of like, well, we started out doing it this way, and when we started this out, you know, the way we did it was really, you know, an amazing, huge improvement. But these days, you know, it actually looks a little old-fashioned and primitive, and you know, other people can start from a different place, and you know, based on what they've learned from seeing how things have gone with Gravity Forms, and that gives them, you know, certain advantages. But you know, I don't think everybody who's already, you know, invested a lot in Gravity Forms is going to, you know, jump ship unless they find something extremely compelling about another solution.
Jonathan, thoughts?
Well, I think I normally, you know, our panel members are normally much more intelligent than me, John. So I just agree with them. I just I totally agree with Sallie. You know, I think on the business side, I think Gravity Forms have done a lot of things that are really good business. You know, $199. You get everything thrown in. When you renew, I think it's $90 when you, or $70 to $90 if you renew. You know, they've done a lot of things right and on the business, and they've, like Sallie said, they were first in the market. You know, about 3 or 4 years ago, there wasn't much choice. Like what Sallie said, it was either Content 7, the quasar German Japanese individual, or it was Gravity Forms, wasn't it, to some extent? But now the landscape, you've got a lot of choices, haven't you? But it's also dominated by search again, isn't it? You know, if you do a search WordPress content form, there are some blog posts that seem to dominate search. And if you're not on one of their lists, it must be pretty hard to get oxygen for your product, for your plugin, really, John, isn't it?
Yeah, it really that plays a part. You know, like how much you know, publicity your plugin gets. That is part of it for sure. With Gravity Forms, there's a couple other things that resources that I want to point out, and one that work in accordance like with it. One is called Gravity Perks. This is at gravitywiz.com. I want to say I know the person behind this. I think I do, actually. But this is a whole bunch. It's a separate plugin, but it helps you enhance some things for Gravity Forms that aren't included in the plugin naturally. There's a lot of different things here you can look at that will make using Gravity Forms easier. And another resource that I want to point out is Gravity Plus Pro, and that the person behind that is, I believe it's Naomi Bush, but there's some add-ons that she develops for Gravity Forms. And I believe that Russell Aaron also has a Gravity Forms styling plugin.
I think he's not supporting that anymore.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of additional sort of extensions for Gravity Forms, which is, you know, that's kind of like one of its advantages because it's been around so long. There's sort of a whole sub ecosystem around it. So you've got things like, you know, Gravity Flow, Gravity PDF. There were, I think, a couple of different sort of styling options. You know, I've bookmarked a bunch of these things. You know, there's a GF charts plugin for displaying charts from your form results. So it's, you know, there are advantages that kind of accrete over time as something has become established. And if you use a lot of those things a lot, that makes you less likely to switch from Gravity Forms to something else unless those things are available. But, you know, we don't know that those things, you know, I think we kind of have to wait for a little dust to settle with some of the newer things and see, you know, as something proves successful over time, you'll see more of those options for the other form plugins.
Yeah.
Last plugin that I want to mention, that's specifically in the WordPress space, is Formidable Forms. Kim, you said you had experience with this one?
Yeah.
Yes. It's been a couple years, but it was highly recommended to me. I would say it was pretty easy. It was very easy to use, just to build a form, very drag and drop. If you needed 2-column forms, it was really easy to create that, which was very nice because the application I used it for was when I still actually did some hands-on work for people. And it had to do with building out a shipping box subscription, you know, kind of like a Birchbox type thing. Mm-hmm. And so it was a form with that and a lot of drop downs and then needing payment from there because she didn't want to use her WooCommerce for this piece. And because the memberships for that didn't give enough. So that it was fairly easy to use. Certain pieces of styling were very easy for drag and drop as far as, like I said, multiple columns, that type of thing. Some of the CSS at the time was a little quirky, but I managed to get some kind of, I don't know, lifetime membership or something I bought, but I just haven't been using it ever since because, again, since most of what I do is teach, a lot of people just want a really basic form to get started with, and they're not going to pay the, you know, even the basic $40 or whatever for just a, you know, name, question, subject, you know, type thing.
couple things that I notice in their add-ons is there's some things that are that I think are unique to them. One is it has a form action automation where you can schedule email notifications, SMS messages, and API actions. It also has extensions for WP Multilingual and Polylang, so it would be automatically translated, I'm guessing. And there's another one in here that was very interesting to me. The Formidable API, it sends entry results to any other site that has a REST API. So if you have a Formidable form on, a couple separate sites, you can bounce that information back and forth, which I think is pretty interesting.
It's quite impressive, isn't it? It's a lovely website,
Yeah.
isn't it? It's
yeah,
and it's well laid out, and they've got a lot of additional from themselves and from third parties, haven't they? And
yep. There's go ahead.
And the pricing,
Keep going.
The pricing seems quite attractive, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's right in line with what other people are doing. Yeah.
You got a bit of a jump. You got 199 for 15 sites, then unlimited. You got to go up to 399. Compared to the unlimited of 199 with Gravity, but there's certainly certainly something to look at, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. There's one more. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go on, John.
There's one more that I want to mention here. It's Typeform.com, and it's not specifically a plugin. It's more like a standalone service or a software as a service. But I've been seeing people use these for probably going back like 5 years. And if you have probably come across these in the wild, they have a very unique UI to the form where you can set these up and send people to a specific URL, and I believe that you can host these on your site as well. But basically, like, it just focuses on one question at a time, like one field, and then you basically it just goes step by step. It's a very unique looking form. It's a very cool looking something that a lot of development went into. Is anybody familiar with these at all?
I'm sure I've filled some of them out, but I've never created one.
I've never used that. I have never used that, but there is a way, and it's either in Ninja or Formidable. I'm going to forget now. There is a way to break your form up into that type of layout,
like a multi-part,
where you ask a question and then next one, next one, next one. But I've not used that one.
Well, I think what to kind of wrap it up, John, I think what we gathered from this is that you really need to look around a bit more. I need to, because just looking, because of the show, we came up with this topic, things have changed quite dramatically. And the good news, folks, is you've got a lot more choice now, haven't you?
That's always both good news and bad news.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm exactly thinking the same, which is good news and bad news, like what Sallie said.
Yeah, there's no shortage of choice when it comes to contact forms in the WordPress space. Definitely, there's lots of options. I guess the thing would be sit down with your developer, your agency, whoever you're working with, and figure out what the goals of your website actually are, what you're actually trying to do, and work through some of those kind of workflows. And then once you get those figured out, you will then, and only then, you would kind of know, what form plugin is the right solution for you. But definitely there's.
Yeah, I think if you're a developer, I think you've got 5 to 6 really quite credible solutions that you could go with. I think if you're the owner of the site and you're just looking for a simple contact us, you now have a number of solutions where you used to have only contact 7. You don't have to use that now, do you?
Nope.
I think
There's definitely better ones. I mean, if you only need like someone to just send a message and that's it, and that's all you need, I mean, Contact Form 7 is fine. But there's also other free ones that you can use. I mean, Ninja Forms and Caldera Forms, they are basically a freemium model. You can use it for free. But if you want any of the add-ons or anything like that, then you can, you can do that as well. So,
yeah, I think it's great. So shall we wrap up, John? I think we're full busted, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of resources. Again, there's going to be show notes. If you listen on iTunes, we'll have links to all the resources we mentioned on the website. When we publish this, there will be a list of all the links that you can download as well. Coming up next episode 160, we're going to have Jonathan Stark, so be sure to check that out. And reminding everybody, if you're getting value from this episode, be sure to go to iTunes, write a detailed review. It helps surface this podcast in search results, helps other people find it. And if you write a review, we might read it on the air. So there you go. And with that, let everybody tell us where to find them. Kim, how do we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Kim Shivler, or my websites, howtobuildanonlinecourse.com or whiteglovewebtraining.com.
Excellent. Sallie, how do we find you?
You can find me at WPFangirl.com. I am at Sallie Getch on Twitter, and if you can spell my name, you'll find me anywhere. I'm unique in Google.
Excellent. Jonathan, how do we get a hold of you?
Hi, folks. You normally can get me on Twitter at Jonathan Denwood. Periodically, but I'm normally on there most days having a quick look. Or you could email me at jonathan@wp-tonic.com. And what I would kind of finish, I would encourage people to Twitter Liquid Web and say how much they enjoyed WP-Tonic, and just send them a quick buzz on Twitter saying that I appreciate them being our major sponsor. We're very appreciative, aren't we, John?
Definitely. Or go to their website. Remember, use the code WP-Tonic33 at checkout. You get 33% off your first 6 months, so do that. And if you want to get a hold of me, you can find me at my website, which is lockdowndesign.com. You can find me at Twitter, lockdown_, and my Facebook, just Facebook/lockdowndesign. With that, the WP Tonic crew is saying adios. We out of here.
Bye.